Alright, this is part 2 of my intercooler test video. If you haven't seen my previous video, I bought an eBay intercooler and I need to set up a method of data logging to actually monitor the performance of my stock intercooler versus the aftermarket intercooler. So to start with, I need this. It's a K plus D CAN USB interface cable. I'm going to need an Android tablet or an Android phone to run MHD to actually do the data logging. You need an OTG cable to convert the end of this cable to allow it to plug into your Android tablet. And that's just going to plug in like so. So we're ready to connect it to the car. So let's get it plugged into the car and see what we need to do next. So OBD port is over there. I'm going to connect the cable as such. And now let's get set up with the actual tablet to see what needs to be done. Started the car to let it warm up. Go into our tablet. What needs to be done, I'm going to go into the monitor module. And let's see what happens when we click auto logging. It's probably going to tell me I need to purchase a module, but let's see. See, it says right there. See, it says the following module is required to monitor the car. So I already have the following module purchase for flashing. I don't actually have one of the MHD Flashers on the car. I have whatever came with the car. I believe it was a Dyno Stage 2 copy or whatnot. I actually don't know how much boost this tune runs, and I'd be curious to know anyway. So I gotta purchase the monitor module and then we can take it from there. So I'll do that and I'll come back. So, alright, now I've purchased the monitor module. So we're gonna go to monitor. I can have it so it auto logs. Whenever I press the throttle over 50%, it will automatically start logging. And then once it detects that you're pressing less than 50%, it will stop logging. But just for the sake of this, I'm going to test manual logging. And we can customize these gauges. Let's just see what happens here. I tap the gas. Stop that. Now it's stored it as a CSV file. So we'll get out of here. There's this option here, datazap.me. I can go into that. I can create a profile, which I've already done, and actually get a visual representation of the CSV file. So I'll get logged in and I'll come back. Just give me the option to find a log. So I'm going to here, directory called data logging, and that's the one that we just made. So I have that file set here. I'm going to save this. It's generating a chart for me. There. Let's take a look at that now. Obviously not very much data. It has boost PSI and RPM. So I got it to about 3.5 RPM and it has boost. I need to add more fields into this so that I can monitor more values. Like to this day I have no idea how much boost this car runs, but you know, this will give me an idea of how healthy my tune is and what type of tune it is. I've been driving it for a couple of years like this, funny enough. So yeah, time, passing, boost. It's pretty cool. So anyway, I'll show you guys what's involved in getting more data on there. And also for that program, I want to use a program that will upload the CSV file that was created by MHD and actually give me a dyno plot. So there's some base criteria that's required for that. I'll look into what that is, and then we'll build our data logging accordingly. Most importantly, we want to monitor IATs, boost, and RPM in its most simplest form. You can see the RPM there. It's really good, really cool software. So RPM, you can move to different points. But yeah, so let's look at the software called Virtual Dyno to actually see what's required, you know. So we're going to measure the performance of this intercooler primarily by the amount of boost. I want the car to be fully warmed up. I want it to be at normal operating temperature. We're going to monitor IATs at high RPMs, and we're going to monitor with the stock intercooler, and then we're going to install the aftermarket eBay intercooler and compare the values. And also I want to monitor ignition timing to see, is it going to hold more ignition timing, maybe potentially leading to more power. The outside temperature is around 66 Fahrenheit right now, so definitely a cooler day, but you know, for Houston anyway, in March. So let's take a look at Virtual Dyno now and get an idea of what criteria is required, and we'll go into MHD and build our data log accordingly. To start with, I'm going to go into options, and now we can see accelerator position, load, boost, the median boost, I guess, I'm not sure, boost target, timing corrections, long-term fuel trim, short-term fuel trim, rail pressure. There's a bunch of options we can select. So if I go to manual logging, I have these options, but I want more. Boost mean, PSI. I have two options here. I'm not sure how I modify that. So yeah, I could change this to IAT. We can see the IATs are 82 when we're driving on the road. If it's getting well above 120, close to 160 at high RPMs, that's one thing. I want to add more gauges here, at least RPM gauge layout. So I want to have, let's go by, we're going to want at least 3, and we'll go to manual logging, and we want to change this one to be RPM. So there, that's enough to get a baseline for our intercooler. We're going to see, okay, how much boost do we got? How high does that get? Or sorry, I should have had this be, I gotta change this again. I want this to be IATs. So between PSI, IATs, and RPM, we can gauge what the stock intercooler is doing. This way, just so I can keep this here, we can just watch that. I'll also be creating I'll click start log, or I'll probably just rely on the auto logging to create a file for me whenever I'm going into the mode where I need to test, and basically compare the gauges as well as compare the data logs before and after the intercooler install. So I'll play around with this. I'll show you guys Virtual Dyno and what criteria in terms of my CSV file are going to be required to actually to data log appropriately. So that's kind of cool. You could just, if you wanted to, mount that here while you're doing some runs and doing some testing. Okay, so that data log file I uploaded to my computer. As you can see, it's a .csv file here. So if you open it up, this is what it looks like in Excel. It has all the values, RPMs. You can see there, it was pretty steady. And then I blipped the throttle, raised the RPMs up right around here. Went as high as 3200. It shows throttle position 2.8%. And then it went to 70 something percent just for a brief moment. And when I was at 70, it raised right up to 3200 RPM, and then I let off. So it's a really good program. It gives you a really comprehensive data log. IAT temperatures were 79 degrees pretty much the whole way. Didn't really raise up right here. So all our vital information that we're going to need is in this CSV file for the sake of comparing the intercooler before and after. So I actually uploaded the CSV file into this DataZap website, and I can actually play it. It's going to show here 600 some odd RPM just idling, and it goes across and it shows you can kind of play back the actual graph. Okay, so the way we add more fields is here. For instance, I added IATs. So we have our boost, we have our RPM, and we have our IATs. And you can add other values if you want to. Load on the engine, accelerator position. So here I gave it some gas, let off, it shot up the RPMs, gave it some gas, shot up the RPMs. Even though I let off, the momentum of the crankshaft was still there, so it took some time to settle back down. IATs were pretty stable, except near the beginning they were a little bit less. Really cool software, it's really awesome. So throttle position, exact position, etc. So obviously it's not going to do any timing correction for any of the cylinders, but we'll monitor that high up, right around red line with the stock intercooler. Is there timing correction happening, and is there less after? That will translate to power. So that is the actual data log represented in a graphical form. You already saw what it looks like in a CSV file. Next I'll show you what you need to do to actually get these values into Virtual Dyno, so we can turn it into a quick dyno graph. So I went to this website, virtualdyno.net. I clicked download, and I'm going to set up the software now. Okay, so now we want to build ourselves a dyno prop. We got to add a profile. We want to add a BMW 335i, and it is a sedan auto. Okay, we're going to tell it what gear. We're going to have to do a pull in a particular gear. That's important. The car weight, I got to put my weight in. Final drive is already there because it knows 2008. And tire, it's stock tire, so I don't have to do anything there. We're going to always do third gear, so I'm going to save this profile. Now we have to load a run. I'll get the CSV file loaded. So I was going to see what happens if I try to load that run. It knows it was MHD Flasher. It shows the RPM range. So I gotta choose my car. Put my weight in. Tell it the gear. No wide open throttle, TPS found. Do you want to close this log? So I obviously have to set up the appropriate type of, got to do appropriate data log that this thing can use. But once you do that, it will literally show you projected torque and horsepower. I heard this is extremely accurate. It's so close to what you get by going to a dyno. I believe it's close to like a Mustang dyno. So if anything, you know, like I'm not gonna count on this too much, but let's just say if it's within 10%, that'll be great to just get a gauge of where I'm at. But I'm not really so worried about that. I just want to see, is there any improvement between the stock intercooler and the aftermarket intercooler? Do we pick up anything? Is there any negative effects? And you know, we have to make sure the car's up to temp and that the intercooler is being demanded. There's a lot of demand on the intercooler. And let's see if it translates to power, if any at all, or less timing correction, meaning less detonation. So yeah, so next step is we're going to go out and actually set up a proper data log file to load into this software. First we'll look at it on the graph, then we'll look at it in this software, and we'll compare stock versus aftermarket. Here's this website here, innovativetuning.wordpress.com. They actually ran some experiments with Virtual Dyno just to see how accurate it actually is. They say right here they're a little skeptical of how accurate it would really be, but decided to spend some time to evaluate it anyway, and boy were they surprised. So here you have Virtual Dyno, 126 wheel horsepower, 126 foot-pounds of torque on a Cavalier. Actual Dyno, 127, 127. Virtual Dyno, 238, 211. Actual 239, 204. 156, 133, 153, 134. Extremely close, and a lot of people are saying the same thing. That is like very close, surprisingly close, compares to a Mustang dyno. Anyway, so I'm back from doing those runs. Let's see here. So over here, this is stock intercooler. The ambient temperature was 60 degrees Fahrenheit. It was raining slightly, but I made sure that the traction control didn't activate in this run. So you can see here, boost on my car peaks to 17.8 and then drops off from there. IETs 75, 77, goes all the way up to 108. So that is 48 degrees above ambient. That's actually high. It's not ideal. A good aftermarket intercooler would be in the 25 degree range. So you know, on my car, I noticed that the whatever tune's on there peaks really aggressive, and then the boost tapers off. I guess that's just for safety. So ultimately, you know, we're well over 40 degrees above ambient here. Not ideal. So that's that for the actual results there. What I did was, I'm going to load the actual data log off of MHD. I'm going to go load runs. This is this last one here. I got my weight already there. That's my actual weight. So we have, I did it in third gear, my car, 3585. I'm 183 pounds. That's a stock tire size. Yeah, so it's all, it has the right final drive loaded. This is a preloaded profile for an automatic 335i. And it's saying 382 wheel horsepower, 373 foot-pounds of torque. Peak torque is, you know, I actually had to start at around 3,800 RPM or 30, let's just see here. Yeah, 3,800 RPM, because when I would start any lower, it would kick down into second gear, and then that would throw everything off. So here we are. Peak torque is around 4,400 RPM, and then it goes down for a bit and crests here. Horsepower raises right up to red line to 383 or 382. So that's actually pretty good. I guess that kind of explains, you know, how this car feels, why it's pretty quick. Ultimately, when it kicked down to second gear, I'm going to put in a couple clips here of me doing this exact run. The first clip is going to be via the GoPro. The second clip is going to be monitoring the actual display of my tablet, showing the readings. And you'll be able to see all this happening. You'll see this IETs climbing. What I notice is when it kicks down to second gear, it actually causes, you know, more heat soak involved, and it actually causes your IETs to shoot up to like 120. So on a hot day, being 60 degrees above ambient is not ideal. You know, it can do that if you hammer it in second gear, ride that through, top that out, hit red line. It heat soaks the intercooler, shift into second gear, into third gear. You're going to be pushing 60 degrees above ambient. When it's 100 degrees Fahrenheit, as it easily is here in Houston many months of the year, that would be pushing you into 160 Fahrenheit near red line on a hot day. That's detonation territory. That could be bad news. You would need something to bring you down below 140. That's where hopefully an aftermarket intercooler will come into play. So this eBay intercooler, what I'm going to expect of it now is 20 degrees drop. Tomorrow when I install it in the evening, the actual ambient temp is going to be right around the same. It's going to be in the 60 degree range. So we'll see where we stand after installing that intercooler. Are we well below? You know, we want to stay like under the 100 degree Fahrenheit range at least. We don't want to be up here, we want to be down here, leveling off. So I'll get that intercooler installed and we'll do this over again. One thing I didn't cover was actually the timing. It started to pull timing. Looks like at around, let's see here, at around 6,000 RPM it starts to really pull timing. So, you know, not really, but it pulls a few degrees of timing, 4 or 5 degrees of timing. Let's see how that changes. I was looking up drivetrain loss on these cars. Manuals are 12 to 15%. And automatics are in the neighborhood of around like 18% rear-wheel drive, and you know 22% for manual all-wheel drive, and like maybe all the way up to 25% on an all-wheel drive automatic. But on my car, factoring in an 18% drivetrain loss, I'm making around 450 at the crank and a little bit less torque at the crank, maybe around like 440 torque. So really healthy and pretty good. I'm happy with that. So stock intercooler pulls a bit of timing, nothing crazy. It's a cool day, so that probably helped things out. So that's going to conclude this video. This is going to be the data logging video showing stock. Next video will be installation and a follow-up with these numbers to see, do we gain anything? Am I making more than 450 crank or 382 wheel? And where are we at in terms of IATs and timing? So thanks for watching. Wow.